texting him right now.
The world is filled with stories that have mystified us for centuries. Every family has their own opinions on them. Well, so does ours. Join our family weekly for a podcast where we talk through unsolved cases, strange mysteries, and stories that have shocked the world. This is the family's School of Thought.
Okay, welcome everybody to our first video, first time. I guess we'll learn a lot this one, and maybe the next one will be better. But anyways, we are a family from Michigan, and one of our things that we've always liked to do is talk about mystery throughout the world. And so we thought it would be a good time to get together, and we'd have a try out our new web series called The Family School of Thought. First, before we get going, Jesse and Matt, wave your hands. Jesse is my daughter. This is my son-in-law, Matt. Cassie's up in the right-hand corner. Cassie, and my wife, Denise, in the top left. And I'm Ted. Okay. Jesse's going to start us out with our daily
fact. It's from the Mental Floss Amazing Facts calendar, the 365-day calendar, but amazing fact. Both cotton candy and the electric chair were invented by dentists. Pretty interesting.
That is very interesting. I could see the dentist doing the cotton candy because, you know, it would cause people to need to go to the dentist.
Well, I was just thinking because it was called candy floss.
Candy floss, yeah.
Candy floss.
Wow. That's even
I bet
more.
I can see the electric chair too, just because like I'm sure I don't know, like I'm sure they were trying to like invent something to like wake the patients up from anesthesia.
Oh, I'm thinking he probably had enough patients sitting in his dentist chair thinking I want to murder these people. You know what I could do is like electrocute them while they were sitting here.
Yeah.
Could be.
Maybe.
Okay. I was just thinking it was an accident, but okay.
I was thinking it's a happy accident. Well, not a happy accident, but an accident.
A little accident.
Yeah, right. Could be an accident.
And here I think that they're just going to give it to them as their last.
This is probably a really stupid question, but I wonder when the first electric chair was invented. If it was like about the time electricity came about and electric tools for dentists came about, I can kind of see it now.
Yeah, that I don't know. It's not on the calendar, but.
Interesting.
Maybe you could ask Alexa.
Homework. People can do homework.
No.
That could be a segment when we get stumped. Let's ask Alexa.
Yeah.
We'd have to pay some royalties if we did that.
We have another son, Jordan, that lives in Texas. He's not with us tonight, and hopefully he'll be joining us sometime in the future. But if you look at our logo or a sketch of us, he's in that. So just in case anybody's wondering that. Okay. Cassie, in Portland, Oregon, what's the weather like today?
It was pretty cold. It was cold and cloudy. It was like 42. I mean, that's cold here. 42 is cold.
Oh, wow. Because I was thinking we're in a heat wave at 35.
But it's supposed to be dropping.
Out on the coast, not in Portland, we had a tsunami watch because of the volcano that's erupting.
I seen that. They had a volcano in the water. Yeah. In the ocean.
That's usually where volcanoes are.
Yeah, we were looking at that too. Matter of fact, at work we were talking about literally Russia is not very far from the United States.
Right.
Like Sarah Palin,
so you can see Russia from your house?
It's pretty close when she said she could see Russia from her house. Because there's like an island and like really it's only 2.5 miles.
Right. Right.
That's close.
I hate to break this to you.
Together.
I hate to break it to you, but the world is a globe. It's just a circle.
Wow.
we all made fun of
it's
Sarah
round.
Palin,
That's how it's round.
You can see Russia from her house. That was so funny, but
yeah,
literally it is pretty close. Just but that another interesting fact.
We're just divided by water.
Okay.
Yes, that is correct.
So anyway, every week what we're going to do is one of us, I'm starting this out there, is going to have a mysterious story to tell. And then the rest of you are going to, pick up on that and give your interpretations or your questions and ideas on that. And also, I'm sure we're going to reflect on our personal stories, because a lot of these stories, I bet we've talked about throughout the years around a campfire or something like that. So
That's true.
So my first story I want to talk about, and you, like I said, you probably have heard this story maybe from me before, but it's about Dorothy Kilgallen. Have you guys heard of her?
No.
She
No.
was back in the 50s and the 60s. She was really a household name because she had a syndicated column in over 200 papers throughout the world, and it was called The Talk of Broadway. No, The Voice of Broadway. And it was really about Broadway stars and their lives, but it was kind of like the Entertainment Tonight of the 1950s, It was gossip, but she knew a lot of celebrities, and she kind of bumped elbows with a lot of them. She was very good friends with the Kennedys and a lot of the stars. A lot of the stars, when they came to to New York, she would, spend time with them and write stories about them. And if there's some kind of scandal going on, like maybe it was about them, they would go to her to kind of cover a story to kind of get them out of their scandal type thing, And she had that syndicated newspaper article that she put out every week, but she also was an author. She wrote several books. She also had a radio show with her family, her husband, and kind of what we're doing right here. They had a talk show on the radio during the 50s, and then she was a panelist on a show called What's My Line? And
Oh, I've heard of that.
I mean,
Not whose line is it anyway.
What's My Line for when you're a kid, right?
Well, yeah, Cassie's right. It was Drew Carey. Yeah.
You're thinking of whose line is it?
It was a big show at the time, and again, this is in the 50s, right, when there wasn't a lot of television, but it was a go on YouTube and you can watch all the old shows, but it was a line of panelists, and it was her, Kitty Carlisle, a bunch of like celebrities, maybe not big time celebrities, but celebrities. They were on there every week, and then guests would come on and they would tell their story, and they had to guess what this person did for a living.
Mhm.
So they had so many questions they could ask, and then they would have to go, okay, you're a Broadway actress, or you're a welder, or whatever. And then once a week they'd have a celebrity on there, so they'd put on blindfolds and start asking questions, and they would try to guess who it is. And she was good at it. She was on it the whole time the show was on, well, up until her death. So she did that, and she was just, everybody knew who she was because she did so many things. But she also did a lot of investigating reporting. So like whenever there was big trials going on in the United States at the time, she would cover them, And Lindbergh, when his son got kidnapped, she covered that court case. I'm trying to think of the guy's name. Sam Shepard. I don't know if you've heard of that story, but he supposedly killed his wife and family, and it was a big deal. Truman Capote, I think, wrote a book about it, In Cold Blood. You probably heard of that. So she covered that trial. So she would cover these big trials also. So she kind of had her, feet in everything. She was around the country, really. She had like I said, she knew all the big celebrities, and they were all friends with her, but she had a big feud going with Frank Sinatra, because Frank Sinatra was supposedly part of the, the underworld and, gangsters. And she kind of exposed that in one of her articles, and he got really mad about it. So he started really bad-mouthing her and trashing her, and at his concerts. And then whenever somebody was quoting him all the time, was saying stuff about her. So
Wait. So is he? It's like a Carol Baskin's Tiger King kind of situation with her and
Yeah.
well, I guess they're kind of like that. I guess.
Like, is he making songs about how he doesn't like her that much?
And Frank Sinatra was the, biggest star in the world at the time. And she kind of exposed his, contacts and his part in the, underworld. And they kind of helped him get his career on top. But what they really did was supposedly, allegedly, they helped Kennedy get elected, So Kennedy's father, Joe Kennedy, who was allegedly a bootlegger, that's how he made all his money, but he kind of bought that election. And the Teamsters and the gangsters and got him elected. They rigged, the elections were rigged before Trump too, because way back then they could buy elections. And so that's what happened. But then once he got elected, all of a sudden he wouldn't have anything to do with Frank Sinatra because he didn't want that connection, So Frank was really mad, that he did all this work to get him elected, and then he's like, wouldn't pay attention to him. And matter of fact, Frank had a whole part of his house built for Kennedy to come stay in, and it was all secure, and a whole section of his house. Well, he would never go there, and so it really made Frank mad. Dorothy, reported on that, and back in those days, you didn't do that kind of thing. So, anyways, she was really good friends with the Kennedys. Then, when Kennedy got shot and assassinated, she was very outspoken about that because she was like, "No, this didn't happen like they're saying it did," And she started investigating herself, and so she went and had she went down to, so he gets assassinated, and she gathers up this team, and they go to Texas. And at the time, I know we've actually, Cassie, were you with us when we went to Dallas, and we literally could look out the window?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She was little.
You're there. Okay.
Yeah. I remember, for some reason.
Lee Harvey Oswald supposedly shot Kennedy, killed him. But Jack Ruby, who owned a bar in town, literally on national TV, live TV, they were taking Lee Harvey Oswald out of his, prison cell to take him somewhere in a parking garage filled with people, packed with people. I mean, can you imagine? He just killed the president of the United States, and they've got him in the middle of a parking garage with thousands of people standing around, Jack Ruby literally came up with a gun and shot him and killed him. And so she goes down and she's going to start interviewing people because they're saying, Lee Harvey Oswald shot him from this window with one rifle. And she's like, no, that doesn't make sense. That's not right. Something's going on here. And at the time, my dad always said, when Kennedy got assassinated, that's what changed everything in the United States. Because prior to that, whatever the government said, that's the way it was. Nobody questioned it ever. After that, however, because everybody knew that couldn't possibly happen the way it did, they said, after that, that's when people started questioning everything the government was saying, because it was just unbelievable. So she goes down there, she interviews Jack Ruby, and she's the only person to ever interview Jack Ruby. Ever. The only person. So she goes down there with her team of people, and they goes down, and she all of a sudden pulls her team to people. She said, get on a plane and get back to New York. Don't ever tell anybody you were down here. Okay, so they did. So she interviews Ruby. She takes all these notes. Of course, she's writing a book on this. And of course, this is before, you literally wrote on paper everything you were doing. There was no typing out a copy and putting it in a database anywhere. So she's writing a book on this, and she comes back and she goes back to her show, and she's doing the shows, and she starts telling people, I'm writing a book on the assassination of Kennedy, and they come out with a Warren Commission at the time, which I don't know if you guys know what that is, but it was a whole commission that got together, and they were going to prove that Kennedy was literally shot from that window by Lee Harvey Oswald because nobody believed it. So this whole commission got together. Ford, he wasn't a president then, but he was on that commission, and I can't think of who else. There was all the top political people were. And so they put the statement out. Okay, we've studied this for really a couple of years. And we decided he really did get killed the way it's been said, So she starts challenging that in her articles, in her interviews. She starts doing it. And she said, I'm writing a book about assassination. I know why he got killed. I know the reason. And I'm writing a book. It's going to blow the lid off of any story you've ever heard. It's going to be the story of the century. So then, and like everybody knew her, like she had like just boxes of papers. I mean, she was just so into writing this book about it. So she goes and does her television, What's My Line thing. And her dresser at the time had at that time in the 50s, when you're on television, you were in ball gown, jewels, the whole deal, But she was dressed she didn't wear the outfit he put out. She wore a very casual outfit, which was unusual. So they do the story and they do the show, and she leaves with this mysterious man. Nobody knows who this guy is. And she's seen in the bar across the street with this guy. And so everybody's kind of wondering who's this guy she's with, and she was married and had kids, but he was kind of younger, but dashing, I think he was kind of known just a little bit because he was so like the bachelor of the town type guy, So, and the next morning they find her in her townhouse, which she had one of those 5-story brown brick buildings in New York. They find her dead in one of the bedrooms. But the bedroom wasn't hers. It was a spare bedroom. And she still had the clothes on from the night before. She still had her wig on, her eyelashes, her makeup was all still on. And she was in bed with a book, like she had been reading a book. But her reading glasses weren't in there. So, and the book was a book she'd finished like months before because she was telling everybody about this book. So it was like not even a book she would be currently reading. So obviously there's a lot of red flags, like something's up. But they do a autopsy on her, and she had died of overdose of barbiturates and alcohol. So at the time, her husband, all these friends she had, nobody said, no, this isn't right. Something's not right. Everybody kind of thought that's weird of her to die like that way, but nobody happened. So years go by, and people started asking questions. They were like, why doesn't anybody ever question how she died? And they start pulling out all these facts. And
well, why aren't they going after the guy that took her to dinner?
Well, every person that started maybe to write an article about it or pushed it mysteriously died in a car accident.
Where was her husband when she was in the spare bedroom?
Well, at the time, it was a little unclear if her husband and her were separated or not. But they were a well-known couple because they had this radio show with their kids. So he wasn't home. Separately. He wasn't home, but it wasn't really unusual for him to not be home, So, but yeah, and that was one of the things. Like nobody ever questioned her husband, or her husband never said, "No way would she have died like this." Something's up. And all this paperwork and all this stuff is gone. Like all her papers she was writing and all the material she had and all the evidence she had, they never seen it again.
So all of the stuff that she interviewed,
all the interviews, everything's gone. Nothing was there.
So somebody's burned it.
Obviously she was killed for a reason. And it was whatever she knew why Kennedy got assassinated. And there's a book, I think his name is Mark. I'll find it in a minute. Can't think of his name. He's an author, and he wrote a book. Well, first he started writing a book about mysterious deaths, like Kennedy, Marilyn Monroe, and somebody told him, and says, you've got to put this Dorothy Kilgallen in there because she has a really interesting story. So he did, but he was so intrigued by it, and he's seen so much evidence of like something's not right here, he decided to write a whole book about it, and it's called The Reporter Who Knew Too Much. And it's a really, really good book. And so it just kind of outlines it does her whole life. She really came from a wealthy family. Her father owned a lot of newspapers and stuff. So she had her first thing she did when she was 18 was a girl around the world, where she literally traveled around the world and did a story from each town type of thing. But I mean, there's tons of stuff on the internet and tons of stuff like people now who are willing to talk. Most of the people that really had it are gone now, because this was in 1965 when she was murdered or died of
Allegedly murdered.
Yeah, but I think I'd be afraid that if you investigated, you might come up dead.
Well, that's why it went 50 years with nobody saying anything. That is exactly why.
Well, I'm not going to come up dead.
Well, what happened to the people that she did the interview with? Like the people that went with her to go interview Jack Ruby.
What happened to Ruby?
Two of them
Jack
are still
Ruby's dead.
alive.
He was dying of cancer at the time.
Oh.
Who was?
Jack Ruby died like shortly after.
Yeah, right. He died not long after. And also, it's a theory that he was given something to cause him to die fast of cancer. You know,
I thought he had been diagnosed, and that's why everyone thought it was weird that he suddenly got so moral, because he was like a gangster at the time.
He was a gangster at the time, owned a strip club is what he owned. You know what I mean? He had no reason to be, I'm going to kill this guy. You know?
Yeah.
So obviously, they feel like he was involved in it too. And he knew the real story. And I was looking at one of the reasons they had that top 10 reasons why Kennedy was assassinated. So number 10 was Jimmy Hoffa. Do you guys know who he is?
Yeah.
Okay. So him and the Kennedys have always had this ongoing feud. His brother Bobby really put Jimmy
he died
Hoffa in jail.
mysteriously. He's not been found.
So that was number 10 that Jimmy Hoffa had him put up. Fidel Castro was number 2, and that's pretty plausible too, because just prior to that, you've heard of the Bay of Pigs, where literally Kennedy almost got us blown off the earth. There's some anti-cat, so that not one theory is Castro had him assassinated, but another theory was some anti-Castro people. If we have him blown away, obviously they're going to blame it on Castro. There was a lot of white wing extremists. Things we're doing today, the stuff was going on back then too. So there was a lot of white ring people either liked Kennedy or they hated him, you know. Mm-hmm. And so the people who hated him because he was Catholic meant you shouldn't be the president of the United States because you're Catholic. You know, so I mean, there was that much hate over that. Plus, the Kennedys had a lot to do with integration and race issues. So a lot of the white supremacist people. What's that?
I was gonna say there's a lot of mysteries just involving the Kennedy family altogether.
Exactly. So they helped out the blacks of the time, and so there was a lot of white supremacists then that were after them for that reason. The military, the military wanted him assassinated. Lyndon B. Johnson, who was the vice president, it's a big theory that he had something to do with it because they were total enemies prior to him becoming his vice president. Actually, they were running against each other and they fought big time. And when he got the nomination for the president, he thought he could bring Johnson's people on board, which would get him elected, and it did. But they were total enemies the whole time. And there's a lot of questions of like, why would you just happen to be in Dallas when he got assassinated? You're the vice president. You shouldn't be there, And he immediately took over, So it was kind of like he had that going. The CIA. There was a lot of the CIA was afraid he was going to expose a lot of things going on. The Federal Reserve. But the number one reason why people think he was assassinated, what do you guys think it is?
Aliens.
Yep. The number one reason is he knew about other lives and other planets, and he was saying it's time people knew. Let's stop lying to people. Let's tell them, and they were afraid that he was going to expose that.
Oh, isn't it crazy how much 60 years has? Because now it's been confirmed. They're already aliens.
So
That's because
I think that's interesting. She really, she did so much, work, and ended up being killed off because she was going to tell the world that there's aliens. Well, she was going to tell the world that Kennedy was assassinated. And that's back in 1965 when people you didn't speak up about stuff,
Right. Yeah, that's pretty interesting, I'd have to say. But yeah, it all leads back to aliens, doesn't it?
Always leads back to aliens.
It always does, doesn't it?
It is pretty interesting, though. I mean, there's always been that mystery behind Kennedy's assassination. Did it really happen? How we've been told in our history, but half of our history isn't true anyways, because you only get the history from the writer.
Right.
The victors.
Yeah, just like the Mayflower. I mean,
yeah,
we were here before the Mayflower. I mean, people were here before the Mayflower.
Yeah.
We didn't discover this land.
By accident, they thought they were in India.
And just like when you guys were in school, we told you differently that, Christopher Columbus didn't.
Did you guys remember that?
No. I don't remember you ever
guys,
questioning
all three of you guys. No, listen, all three of you guys, when you were studying Christopher Columbus in school, I would you tell that teacher that that's not right.
I don't remember that.
I'm sure I did, because I was a gullible kid.
Because I was like, nope, that's not the true story.
I don't remember you questioning that.
First of all, we invaded America. We didn't find it.
Right.
But anyways, and they first landed in Florida.
Well, yeah.
And they thought they were in India, so they left, and I can't remember how it went now, but they first landed in Florida. Then they went back because they thought they went the wrong way. Then they came and landed in Massachusetts, and the reason they're called Indians because they thought they were in India.
Right. Yeah. But so with the Kennedy assassination, going back to that, there's always been that myth of did it happen? Did it not happen the way that we've been told? And there was a Mythbusters show about it, and I feel like they debunked that Lee Harvey Oswald actually killed Kennedy the way that we've been told. I think that I can't remember that.
They busted that. They proved that it wasn't possible, or they proved it was possible.
I think they proved it wasn't possible, but I could be wrong. I could be remembering incorrectly. I'm not 100%, but I do know that they did an episode on it.
I think they said it was plausible.
It was plausible.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we've all seen the footage.
Maybe they didn't want to die. Yeah. Maybe they just didn't want to die in a car accident, so.
Yeah. So they couldn't really figure it out for sure because they couldn't kill anybody off.
Well, we've all seen the footage of it, right?
Yeah.
Well, that footage was not released until many, many years later. Nobody ever seen that footage. But in the footage, you can literally see his head go back. I mean, it's of course it didn't happen that way.
Right. Right.
Yeah, somebody shot him from the front, but in that building when he was coming would have been.
They shot him from both ways. Yeah,
right.
both ways.
Yeah. There was multiple shooters.
Right, multiple shooters. And probably Lee Harvey Oswald wasn't in the window shooting, and he probably thought I'm killing but it probably was the CIA at the time or something like that. But
well, I can't blame anybody like that.
That's true.
We want to get past episode 1, please.
Really, we're already been.
We have to edit that out, Cass.
For
remember that. I know. Well, remember the FBI is always listening. So.
Yeah. Well, this is for entertainment purposes only.
Matt's already gone.
So, Cass or Jesse, you remember sitting in that window?
Yes, I do. Sorry, Matt had to go take care.
And what a small window it was. And really, that whole stretch of what do they call that? I can't remember now.
The grassy knoll.
Grassy Knoll. It's a
Yeah,
very
the Grassy
small.
Knoll, okay,
It's a very small place, and it's not like
Right.
yeah.
right. I don't really.
Well,
I
isn't
mean, I was
there?
so young at the time too. I mean, I was in like 5th grade, I think. So I remember going, and I remember watching the video as like as a 5th grader. That's pretty traumatizing to see that, but I remember just.
Were you? You felt you were traumatized by going there?
No, I don't know if this is something good or bad, but I was pretty fascinated by it.
Yeah.
I remember being fascinated. I don't know. It's
Well, that's like Cassie was always so fascinated about Princess Diana's death. I'm like, well, that's kind of weird, but okay.
Was I really?
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't know
What
that.
year would that have been? That had been about 99,
It was,
98?
in 98, I think.
98.
So,
So
yeah, you
you're
would have
5,
been like 5.
and you were
Yeah.
totally fascinated by it. You just had
Yeah.
1,000 questions, and we were like,
I'm still so. I
I'm not
didn't realize
telling
that.
a
I'm like
5-year-old
still
about this.
obsessed with her death.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, yours
I
were.
didn't know that.
I think it was just on TV,
Oh.
like constant,
Well, there's another controversial death that, is it true on what we
We'll
know?
get to it.
Right.
We'll get to it. Yeah.
Right.
I don't know. And then Marilyn Manson, you were always fascinated. What's wrong with our family?
Monroe.
Monroe.
Marilyn Monroe.
Or not Marilyn Manson.
Obsessed with that. Because we
Marilyn
don't
Manson's
believe
still
them.
alive, unfortunately.
Marilyn
not
Monroe.
Marilyn Manson. No. Who am I thinking of? The cult leader.
Monroe. Oh,
Charlie
Charles
Manson.
Manson.
Charles
Oh, that's
Manson.
definitely a show in itself, right there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
that's
it.
crazy.
I mean, don't you remember Cassie doing a book report on that in middle school? And the
Yeah.
teacher
I wrote
had
a
to,
paper
call you
as-
guys to get approval for it.
Because no, it wasn't a book report.
I remember the teacher saying, "Do you know what your child just wrote?"
No, because it wasn't a book report. I wrote. We had to write in the perspective.
In your
It was
journals?
like it was supposed to be an assignment that was like, in the perspective of somebody, and it could be like anybody, and like I think the prompt was like, villainous or something like that. I can't remember, but Dad had
Do you
just
still
told
have
me
that?
about like Charles Manson, and so I wrote this paper in the perspective of Squeaky Fromm.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I wrote it in the perspective of like, I'm Squeaky Fromm, and I'm in
And
this
you were
cult with
7?
Charles. No.
he
This
would've
was in
been-
middle school.
Yeah,
It was
so
in
she
middle
would've been
school.
12 or 13. Yeah.
Yeah.
When I was
Interesting.
in middle school, I think I was in 6th grade, maybe 7th, I can't remember. We had to do a term paper. So you can guess who I did my term paper on.
Janis Joplin, of course.
Janis Joplin.
Yeah.
And so I put it all out there about all her drug use. She had some lesbian affairs, and I mean the whole thing, right? And I spent a whole semester writing this. It wasn't like something for the week. A whole semester writing this. And my teacher wrote it. And he called my mom. And he's like, "Do you know what she's writing about?" He goes, "This is some
So it's
really
just-
heavy stuff for a 6th grader." And she's like,
So
"Yeah,
it's just
he's
a family
little
tradition.
Yes, yes.
We're fascinated.
I would love to
by
read
the
that
mysteries of
paper
it.
again. Just because
Yeah,
like
you
there's no way
haven't?
I knew anything about Squeaky Fromm. Because like I still don't really know anything about Squeaky Fromm. So
feel
like
like-
how did I do that?
But I feel like you read Helter Skelter around that time.
Yeah, probably.
Yes.
Maybe.
And
Or
I think
there's-
that's why you were fascinated by the book because you were reading it, and then that was like your good idea to write the
Maybe. I just remember Dad had told me a story about when he found out about the murders and Helter Skelter was playing and he was at a campfire. And so I wrote that part
No,
in the
it
like
wasn't
actual
Helter-
story. Yeah.
We were up north camping,
Mhm.
and it was late at night, and we're trying to build a fire in the fire pit, me and my brothers. And we heard, back in those days, you had a AM radio that you carried around with you, and we were listening to it, and they were playing The Doors, Light My Fire.
Oh.
Come on, baby, light my fire. And so we're singing that, and we're trying to get this fire going. And like all of a sudden, they come over. They're like, "We interrupt this program to bring you a special bulletin from Hollywood, California. Actress Sharon Tate was found murdered in her home this evening." And it's a gang of, I don't know. They went on about, I can't remember if they went on about the night before a bunch of people got killed, or was it night? I can't remember how it went, but they're telling all about it. And this Sharon, she was like at the top of her fame at that time too.
right.
I was a
Right.
little kid, so I didn't really know who she was, but like, my mom was like, remember she was on an episode of the Beverly Hillbillies, and you're like, and my mom was really, really into pop culture. You know what I mean? Anything like that. So it spooked me.
She always was. Yeah, she
Here we go
stayed.
for the-
She stayed like that.
Yeah, she was. She was always into pop culture. So she got us out of bed. Tiny Tim, who was a hippie, he sang Tiptoes Through the Tulips. Total hippie.
Yeah.
That's all he was known for. Is he'd be on all these talk shows and stuff. And
That's pretty good.
That's like perfect scary song. It's in like every single scary movie.
Yeah. So he got married on the Tonight Show by Johnny Carson. So my mother gets us out of bed in the middle of the night. We're just little kids. You got to watch this because you're going to be able to tell your grandkids that you've seen Tiny Tim get married on the Tonight Show. So I can't wait for Odin to understand what I'm saying.
I was gonna say he is gonna like be fascinated by that.
Fascinated.
He's going to be fascinated by all of
When I
the
show him a
things
picture
that
of him,
this
he's gonna
crazy
be doing
family
it
comes
now.
up with.
But anyways, yeah. So, so it freaked me out because we were camping. I was a little kid. We're camping. We're sitting around trying to get a fire going. We're singing "Light My Fire." They come over. Some scary story about some actress I kind of barely like. Oh yeah, I kind of. And it was scary.
And you heard cracks in the woods.
Well, no,
And then somebody was coming.
No, so then we were laying across the hood of the car, and the Northern Lights came out that night, which you guys have never seen them, but they're just unbelievable. So
They are unbelievable.
We spent all
first
night
moved
watching
over,
the Northern Lights after that.
that was the first thing that we seen.
Yeah. So
They came out. I remember seeing them when I was in like high school, and I drove to Matt's house and I saw them, and I couldn't figure out what it was, and then it took me sadly like a couple days to like realize what it was. But
when we
I don't
first
think I've
moved
ever seen
here,
them.
You haven't?
here, I seen them one night, and I was like up at 3:00 in the morning by myself, and I'm trying to get you guys.
You had inventory. You had inventory.
I remember getting the video camera, and of course that was the big old VC
and it was
camera, and taking movies, but you couldn't see them.
Yeah, I remember. I remember going out in the backyard to watch Comets.
And
I think that was before Cassie was born.
But you guys would have only been 5 and 6 or 6 and 7 when we seen those lights the first time here because we went out on the front porch.
Yeah.
But Cassie, you weren't born then.
No.
As with all my life, everything happened before I was born.
No, not everything.
Isn't that the story of the family? You went whale watching, but you weren't born yet. We saw the Northern Lights.
You were at Cape Cod with us.
What's that? Yeah, you were at Cape Cod. Yeah, you got to see the whale watching from inside the belly.
Yeah, I don't remember it. I don't remember. I have like a fear of the ocean, and that I'm realizing that I don't like being in the ocean when I can't see like what's under me.
Really? So
I think I knew
maybe it's because you guys.
I like the water, but I don't. It scares me to not know.
Yeah, I have to like tell myself not to think about it.
Right.
Were you
I have to like
scared on the cruise ship?
No, not on the cruise ship because I was safe.
No, same thing. Like like above ground, like you couldn't like if I had been able to like
go in
like
the
you
ocean.
can go below deck. You can like go below deck basically and like see like outside of a window. I would not have been able to do that. Like
I got news for you.
I just been like, what is gonna pass by at any second?
You were sleeping underwater. You know that, right?
Yeah, I didn't see it though.
Right, we did not have windows.
I didn't have to see it though.
The first time I went on a cruise ship beforehand, I was really nervous about it because just thinking you're that far out, something goes wrong. It's not like you can get off and go, run or into something. So I was really nervous about it, but it didn't bother me once I got on. But alcohol helps that.
Yeah, I agree. We had a lot of alcohol.
We got a lot of alcohol, so I wasn't thinking about sinking or anything like that.
I know. I remember they gave us those like free cups, and you could just like take it up and be like, Alcohol,
Yeah.
please.
All day, all
More
night.
please, more please.
Never stop refilling.
That's
My
how
God,
it was
I
when
know.
we went to
Empty.
Jamaica.
Huh?
When we went to that Sandals Resort in Jamaica, Matt and me,
Yeah.
when we went there, because it was the same thing. All you can eat, all you can drink. Wake up,
Yeah.
get a drink.
Right.
So the
Never-
fears you have, they go away.
Well, I'm not scared of the ocean, so
Good for
Matt and
you.
I went swimming in the ocean when there was like shark signs. So we don't have a big fear of that kind of stuff.
Well, your mother and I, when we went on a ship, we went where you're not supposed to go because we were going to go down to the engine room.
Mm-hmm.
And we went on this outside staircase. And it was just like a fire escape staircase outside, 3:00 in the morning. Drunk.
Deck.
Yeah. And it was like windy, and somebody's dress literally blew off. So that was a pretty dumb thing to do. But
That's how accidents happen. But hey, everybody survived.
yeah. Did Matt fall asleep or?
He probably attending Odin.
Yes, he is with Odin. So
Poor baby.
yeah.
Mommy.
Yeah. Yeah. You can hear him in the background.
You never answered my question of what happened to all the other people who were with her when she interviewed Jack
Yes.
Ruby.
So there are a few left, and you can go online and they're interviewed. Like her makeup, the person that did her makeup and her hair, which was one of them that went to Texas with her.
Mhm.
She said, "Go home. Don't tell anybody you ever were here." They interview him. It's on. You can go online and look at it. His interview, and he was like, "There is absolutely no way this woman would have went to bed with her makeup on to begin with, loading up her clothes and her wig, and she goes, "There's no way. There's no way it was this
Listen,
state."
I go to sleep sometimes with my makeup on.
Well,
I
she
don't wear a
did.
wig, but I probably would.
I go to bed with my makeup on.
I know.
I know, but you guys aren't Dorothy Kilgallen.
And you're not supposed
She
to.
did not.
That is so
I know, it's
unhealthy.
She
Yeah.
did not.
I
Why?
And you got to remember too. This was in 1965, but she didn't go
They have
out.
arsenic in their mascara.
She didn't go out in blue jeans and a sweatshirt neither. I mean, like you were totally done, gown, hair,
Right.
jewels. Okay.
Well, she was very wealthy.
She was very wealthy. She came from wealth. Her family had money, so. But
That's what I'm saying.
But so none of them ever came forward were they there during the interview or were not there during the interview? Like she was one-on-one with him. Because she obviously
No, it was
to tell her crew to all right, go home, don't tell anybody you're here. Obviously something was said in that
Right.
interview.
And why wasn't
right.
it locked up if it was that private?
Well,
I
she
just don't
was the
understand.
only person to interview him, and obviously somebody was alerted to that. And that's why she said, "Go home. Don't tell anybody you've ever been here."
Mhm.
So she knew something big.
Well, maybe he said something and it got out.
I don't think he probably told the truth, but he was kind of a dumb person. It's not like he made it up. He was just a scapegoat in the whole thing anyhow. You know what I mean? I think it was the CIA, allegedly for entertainment purposes only. It was the CIA because obviously it had to be somebody that knew how to orchestrate this whole thing. And probably Lee Harvey Oswald and Ruby were both just pawns in the game.
So you don't think the mafia was involved at all? Maybe in her death, but not JFK's.
It could be because Hoffa and all them were mad enough, and like I said, he had pissed them off enough after getting elected. He totally shunned them, But and his dad was in that group of people. But I think it was the CIA. I really do. Because I think if the mafia was in it, somehow they would have left their mark on there, see what we can do kind of thing.
Well, they say that CIA is involved in quite a few things.
And you think the CIA
nobody can confirm.
I think they would be like, nobody's ever going to find out how this happened.
Right.
Okay.
They have that way Like,
And they all went to their deathbeds not saying anything, you know.
That's
So-
true. Because even like,
and
like
how can
I
all
would
of the
think like a mafia
information just
hit.
be erased?
It's probably up
What's
there
that, Cass?
somewhere.
Well,
Just the way she died, like, you know, the mafia.
Of
did
course
it,
she cuts
where,
out
like,
right
the
there.
CIA would
Yeah,
make
I
it
know.
look.
You cut out.
yeah, you're freezing. You froze.
Well, I think she agrees with me.
Sorry. I'm here live.
You're
Sorry.
yeah. We missed everything that you said.
I was just
You
saying
froze
that the CIA did it. No, I'm kidding. But that like the mafia like would make it very known that it was the mafia. Like they were like that was like they when they did a mafia hit, you knew it was a mafia hit. Where like her death being so like staged almost like that would be a group that doesn't want you to know that they were involved.
Right.
But the CIA, they cover everything up and everything is erased. So nobody knows anything, just like her death. Where's all that paperwork? Where's all of the, did she not have it in a safe? Why wouldn't she, they had boxes at the banks. I mean, security.
Well, that's what for years, they were like trying to.
Somebody has to have come upon them.
But remember, again, this is back in the early days. You wrote everything. They didn't even have like a Xerox machine.
Yeah,
everything was handwritten.
For it to be that sacred and that important, you would think that she'd have it in a safety deposit box.
But
she would have it somewhere.
Working on it. She's literally working on it. But a lot of people have said, maybe she had stuff hidden, but nobody's ever found it. I mean, it could be out in a coffee can in her backyard. Who knows?
That's true. She probably buried it somewhere.
But that was back before you made copies of stuff. I mean, there was no, way to make copies of it. And
well, I wouldn't say that.
Do you think it would have been her husband or her family that you don't want to deal with the consequences of when she dropped this bomb that we would,
Well, her husband was always accused of not having anything to do with it, but being shut up about it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, they probably paid off or did something to say, don't ever talk about it. And her kids too. Her kids were older. I mean, they weren't adults. They were probably in their late teens, maybe early 20s. And they never did an interview about her, nothing. Like nobody in that family ever mentioned it. So they figured they probably were paid off to, or threatened,
Well, I could see that.
Yeah. But, there's a lot of people that were questioned JFK's assassination that ended up in mysterious car accidents and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, that really, I was reading somewhere where they said that was like his death and like the subsequent like, I guess like mishandling of the case. It was the birth of conspiracy theories like that. There was no conspiracy theories, like even like the moon, like any of that. Like there was nothing like that before this because, like you said, like nobody ever questioned the government before this. And so this was like the big boom of like.
Well, that's why I said my dad. He said prior to his assassination, nobody ever questioned the government. Whatever they said, that's the way it was. Nobody ever questioned that. And he goes, after that happened, he goes, still people didn't question that, but it was in their mind. They're being lied to. And so after that, they started questioning everything. And the fact that here the president of the United States gets assassinated. And immediately the government takes it over, like all the local police, the local guy that does the autopsy. They're all just, shoved out of the way, take him. They got him out of Dallas on a plane to come back to Washington to do the autopsy. Like, everything was so
hush, hush.
They were going to make sure nobody got involved that shouldn't be there. So. I'm surprised Jackie didn't say something before she died. And she did. She was pretty outspoken about, Washington and those people like, look what you did. This is your fault that he got assassinated, So she did point the fingers a lot, but not anybody particular. And it wasn't the government, One of the theories that she married Onassis, who I'm talking about, Jackie Kennedy married Onassis, was because he had an island and she could take her kids and be sheltered from, whatever. That was one reason she married him.
That is interesting. Yeah.
I think it's interesting, but we probably will never find the answer.
Right. It's one of those things that's always going to be unsolved or unconfirmed. But you never know. It could be another 10, 20 years before we get the true answers.
I think at this point, all the people that were involved at the time are now dead.
Yeah.
So they may have grandkids or even kids that, my dad always told me he knew the real reason, but it's hearsay at that point.
Right.
Wasn't there like some, like, I swear, like a couple of years ago, there was like some like big thing where it's like, we're gonna release the Kennedy reports and like all that, like what we've been hiding for 50 years.
I want to say it was about maybe 10 years ago.
Yeah, I want to say
Warren
that
Commission report.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
They went back. They said, okay, we're starting over. We're gonna, the public doesn't believe this, so we're gonna start over. And it was like a 5-year thing of reinvestigating it all, and they didn't come up with anything. It was same story.
No, because
I thought it was like files that they had like been like the CIA had like literally like kept under wraps because quote unquote the
families are still alive, so we probably won't know until all of their families are gone. So it'd be in your time sometime, but not ours.
Well,
that this
one they did release a bunch of files that they wouldn't release at the time, but they didn't change anything. They just said, yeah, it's still the same thing. But and again, is when you say all the people that passed away, again, it's now you're just hearing stories by their, grandfather always said the story. Well, that's hearsay. It's not really good.
Yeah, you're going back to like just hearing the history from whoever's writing it, not what actually happened.
One person said it, and then it's a game of telephone of what's it going to be when it gets to the.
And I'm sure all the facts that I've told you guys your whole lives.
Oh, I believe
will just
them.
be like embellished when you tell your children and like, yeah, your grandpa used to own, half of Michigan and.
See that Mackinac Island?
But I have a lot of stories about my family that are true, that I have proof of.
Right.
Like your mother opened a drawer the other day and started telling me all this stuff, and I'm like, yeah, I've been telling you that for 30 years.
She was showing it to
these
me.
letters.
I thought it was interesting.
It is
interesting.
No, right after Grandma passed away, when we opened the Hope chest and we found a bunch of carbon copy letters.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Those are for another episode.
Yes.
Talk about a Kennedy obsession.
So I do. I tell you what, my mother was obsessed with the Kennedys.
Obsessed.
And I mean obsessed. So we'd go out east to Hyannisport and all those places around there, and we'd go to restaurants hoping we'd run into somebody at Kennedy, Yeah. And then you guys remember her friend Sandy?
Mm-mm.
No, I don't.
It was a while ago. One time they literally almost got arrested because they were going to climb over this wall to their compound and take some pictures.
I can't
and the police come out.
Something like that.
Yeah. You can't see Grandma doing that even.
Oh, she was obsessed with them. I've got tons of books on the Kennedys.
I think Let me check, but I think I still have. Somebody gave me she has like she had the record, the vinyl of the like conversations or something like that. I think I have it. But
well, what it was at the time.
You need to listen to that and see what's on there. There might be some hidden messages.
I listened to it backwards.
No. What it was it was a parody when the Kennedys were in office.
Mm-hmm.
It was a big deal for
Did you listen to it, Jess?
Catholic family to be in the office at the time. And like I said, there was a lot of people who didn't like that idea of a young Catholic family in the White House. But they made an album, and it's a parody of the Kennedys. So it's kind of like, they're all in characters. And they didn't like it at all, the Kennedys.
The Kennedys didn't like it.
But it sold really well. And my mom had a copy, so that's probably what you have.
Yeah. Wait, so it's like the first SNL.
Yeah.
Yes, kind of like that. You should listen to it. It's funny.
I think I have it. I think I got it somewhere.
Funny. Yeah, the Kennedys were really into the Broadway, or that, I don't know what you call it, opera of I forget it now what it was called. Camelot.
The Broadway play Camelot.
Well, it's a musical.
Broadway.
And it's really an opera.
Okay.
So we talked a lot about the Kennedys when I was growing up.
I'm sure. Yeah. Just like we talked a lot about Janice.
Janice.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Janice was a big deal growing up at my house too. I remember the day she died. I didn't really know exactly who she was that day, but
wait, I thought you knew who she was, because you always
came after she died.
Well, here's what happened.
Because you always said you mourned her for like a week.
No, that was John Lennon. That was John. I was only 8 when Janice died. John Lennon's the one I mourned for like a couple weeks. And
he said Janis Joplin too.
I know. I'm pretty sure he said Janis Joplin.
Here's my story. I don't know if I should be telling this story this episode or not, but Janice was I knew who she was because we had one of her albums. But it was kind of like we had the album, but we never really listened to it, And then my friend and I went bowling. I was 8. This is how parenthood was back then. So I went with my friend who was only 8, and he was younger than me, maybe 7. But his hippie brother, hippie. Matter of fact, he had a rest out for him because he had went AWOL, from the Vietnam War. The Vietnam War was going on then. He didn't go AWOL. He wouldn't enlist, whatever you call that, war dodger, whatever. Draft dodger. So he ended up going to jail for it. But anyway, so him and his friend, a couple hippies, right, were riding in his old beat up car. They're smoking, I thought, cigarettes, but I don't know. I'm 8.
I don't think it was.
Let's me go with these people, and they're listening to Janice on an 8-track in the car, and the 2 guys are going on about, oh my God, I can't believe she's dead, and that's unbelievable, and she, we thought she would be blah blah, and the music sounded really weird to me. I was like, wow, that's weird, But I'm picking up on this, something tragic has happened, right? Because they're all upset. So we go bowling. So then I get home, and it's on my mother's birthday, by the way. But I get home.
I thought it was December 4th.
Huh?
I thought her death was on December 4th.
October 4th.
October 4th or December 4th.
But anyways, I get home and my mother's like, Janice is dead. I'm like, what?
Grandma did not like Janis Joplin.
Yes, she did. Well, no, I don't know that she knew. No, she didn't necessarily like her as her music. But again, that was Janice was a big deal at the time, pop culture. So Janice is dead, right? So then we're watching the news, and it's all about Janice died, and they're showing clips of her, in concert and stuff. And so I'm like, oh, so all this is kind of collected in my mind. I go to bed, and on my radio that you carried around with you, because it was 1970, that's all they were playing that night. And they're talking about her and stuff. And I'm like, oh, wow, this is really weird music, you know, because like Me and Bobby McGee and all that stuff hadn't even been released yet, you know.
Right.
So then she dies, and then it's like maybe 2 years later they do a movie on her called Janice, and that's when I started tuning into her. So I'm like, wait a minute, we got an album of hers, you know. So I get the album out, and I'm like, that's when I fell in love with her. But I really fell in love with her. They used to have a show on Friday nights. It was on really late on Friday nights, and it was called Don Kirshner's Rock Concert or something like that. And they showed all the bands of the day and stuff. And they showed a video clip of her at Woodstock singing the song called Work Me Lord. I don't know if you know that song I'm talking about. But it's like, you know, work me, Lord, please don't you leave me. And so but the part I really remember was like, every day I keep pushing, I keep trying to move forward, but something keeps driving me back to black kind of thing. I was blown away because like she's singing the words in my head. That's a woman, you know, it's like literally singing the words out of my head. Like, how could that be? You know, that's when I fell in love with Janice, you know. And so then they released, then her greatest hits come out. No, I'll tell you what. So after she died, Pearl comes out, and it was like a huge smash. I mean, it was on the top charts forever. That's when, you know, of course, my mom and dad did like Me and Bobby McGee. They loved that song. So we listened to that album. But then the movie came out, and then they started her greatest hits come out. And so then it was just kept, you know, every year they released something new on her. But that's when I fell in love with Janice. So,
I don't know. I think you always told me you liked her before she died, but I mean,
I didn't really know. I didn't really know her before we died. Like I said, we had an album, but it was one of those we never listened to. And I remember when she died, all those things happened in that day, and it was like, wow, this is something, you know, made me remember her. But still, it was a couple of years before I really got into her. Yeah. And then
how the soundtrack of every road trip we've ever been on began. Every road trip.
And once I fell for her, that was it. Once I fell for her, there was nobody else after that.
Dad got us a Janis Joplin mix CD for our wedding.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, no, he made everybody a mix CD. And
I don't take road
trips. I just remember when mom got the Solstice, and it had the 5-disc CD player, and I think like 3 or 4 of the like compartments were just filled with Janis Joplin CDs.
Well, yes.
And you could just, all right, we're done with that album. Next album.
No, I think when Dad got a Saab, he took them all out and put them in his, but I need them back.
Well, I was out of the house by the time Dad got the Saab. I was in college.
Huh?
You have a CD player in your car?
Yeah.
In her Solstice. It takes 6 CDs.
In 2003.
And they're all Janis Joplin CDs.
No,
right
now there's one. It's a mix of Janis Joplin and Patti Smith, and I don't care for it.
Okay, we do not have a mix of those two.
Yes, I do.
I know that there's.
We probably have a CD of one and a CD of the other, but they're not a mix.
Oh, I don't know because
just feels like a mix. It feels like
okay.
I want Janis Joplin's greatest hits.
Did anybody happen to see what time we started?
What?
Did anybody happen to see what time we started?
We started about 9 o'clock.
We are an hour and 4 into recording.
Okay. So I think we're only good for an hour. So
yes, we have to wrap it up.
We need to wrap it up.
Yeah.
Well, this was fun. I had a good time.
Fun. Matt said goodbye to everybody.
Out on us. Jordan never showed up, but that's okay. We still had fun.
Matt is he went and got Odin into bed. So
okay. And next week, Jesse's up. Am I right?
No, I'm up.
No, Cassie.
Oh, Cassie's up. So Cassie's up?
Yeah. I got my story. Mine's more of like, I mean, yours was more murder mystery, but mine's like an unsolved
Okay.
murder.
Well, I
Well,
can't
yeah,
wait.
say murder.
And I got mine ready too. So mine's not
Okay.
a story, but it's just a fascination that I think is kind of unique.
No, mine's a story, and it's like a mysterious death that happened.
Well, I can't wait.
Oh, I can't wait. Okay. All right, guys. We got to go. Thanks.
All right.
I love you guys.
Love you.
Bye.
Behave.
Bye.
Enjoy your nice warm weather, Cass.